Well, welcome along to Friday Night Racing here on Off the Ball. I'm Thom Malone, and joined this week by Johnny Ward and, of course, Cathal Beale as well from the Irish National Stud. How are you guys getting on?
Very well.
Pretty good, yeah. Good. Happy to be here.
Discussing who's going to win the hurling next year.
I know. Well, a Wexford man, Nicole, man beside me says, will we get any horse racing talk, or just be hurling talk?
We'll stick to what we know, yeah, the hurling. Yeah.
Of course, our show brought to you in association with HRI, Horse Racing Ireland, and make sure you visit hri.ie. Follow the new Twitter account at HRI Racing, and of course the hashtag as well, every racing moment. Looking forward to the weekend's racing action, including, of course, the first Grade 1 of the year in Ireland in Naas, the Lolas Hotel, Naas. Novices hurdle at Grade 1 contest, where of course Envoy LN tops the market for that. We'll be looking forward to that a little later on, but a reminder, you have a chance to see that and get dinner as well in the trackside restaurant as well. So
proper restaurant, Thom.
Proper restaurant, the
Great
panoramic restaurant, yeah, exactly.
Best kind of vantage point of the race, and nearly maybe bar the Curragh. It's like the new circular building is absolutely class. Big fan. Yeah, well, for your chance to grab admission for two, a delicious four-course lunch in the panoramic restaurant, and a free race card, and of course all the top-class action as well. Just make sure you go across to our Twitter page, check out that pinned tweet for all the details of how to get involved, and of course you can see us live on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube as well. Anyway, Carl, we'll start with you, because welcome along to the show. First of all, you are the CEO of the Irish National Stud. So, I mean, so many people will have visited. It's one of Ireland's premier tourist attractions. But I mean, what can they go down and expect to see?
Well, yeah, we have 137,000 people came down this year. So it's...
Is that all?
That's all. So it's sort of 60-40 between internationals and local people. So I suppose what we like to do is try and make sure everybody gets the story of racing. You know, we do everything in between the racing bit. Yeah. So you can come down and see foals being born. So at the moment, actually we had our first foal last night. It was a sort of a batty foal that arrived. So it's about that high, very small little thing. But
I'll buy it.
First one of the year, yeah. I'll have it sold to you by the end of the day. Yeah. So yeah, come down at this time of the year is lovely. You know, when the foaling starts, and you can see that, see the stallions obviously, and our living legends are a huge draw. So Hurricane Fly, Hardy Eustace, Beaver Salmon, you know, most of your listeners will remember some of those great legends of National Hunt racing. And then, like, there's an awful lot for the families to do, to come down and go to the playground. And obviously coming up in 2020, we have our brand new racehorse experience, which we're really excited about. And that will essentially tell the entire story of horse racing from the time a foal is born all the way through to everything that happens to them. You'll get to race the horse yourself. You get to be basically the owner, the breeder, the jockey, all the way through, and what happens to them.
Sounds
afterwards.
like a much cheaper alternative, Johnny, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Is this like a virtual thing, or is it like...
Yeah, so it's basically there's 10 stages throughout. So you get a little kind of an iPad thing as you enter, and basically you make the decisions along the way. So you see the foal being born, you see the first 18 months of what we do with it, you know, how we get a horse ready, especially for sales, where most of the yearlings will go at this stage. Then you go into the auction room and you buy your yearling. You're welcomed there by Henry Beebe of Goffs, and he welcomes you in, and you have to make your decision. The machine will prompt you, and then you go through the rest of the exhibition. You pick your colours, you pick the name of the horse. We show you what a race day experience is like, the race card, how to read it. You can go in and do a pretend commentary. So we've Dawn Run's Cheltenham Gold Cup lined up, so you can do your best Peter O'Sullivan impression in there, and it records you doing it afterwards.
Oh, wow.
And then all the decisions you've made then along the journey, you get to actually ride in the race, which is actually a 7-furlong maiden around Naas, which we recorded during the year. So you get to actually ride in the race, and it's all done through an algorithm. So wherever the decisions you've made along the way, have you trained it correcectly? Have you?
It's like the old football manager games, whatever.
That's kind of exactly the thought process we had.
Where did you get the idea from? Was it?
I suppose our original idea was we wanted to build a museum just to showcase Irish racing, not just the racing bit, but all the bit that goes around it. Like, we've a huge industry, you know, there's 1.8 billion spent on racing every year, or economic activity. Of that, more than half of that is through bloodstock and through breeding. So we wanted to tell that story in a kind of an interesting way, and talking with Fáilte Ireland, who are helping us put it together, they sort of suggested, why not tell a story as opposed to put 5 different sections within it. You know, we were going to do, like, here's the science bit, here's the this bit, but that was a little bit kind of 5%-y, as we call it, you know, just for real pure racing fans. Yeah. We want this thing to be something that the general median person in the world can come and enjoy and actually experience it and interact with it. We wanted to engage people in it, as opposed to just sort of, you know, spitting the facts at people. So this way you can actually personally interact with it, buy your horse, train your horse, select your name, select your colours, and actually ride in the race on the horse that you've selected against your mates. Hopefully you bring a gang with you, and the exhibition will actually, the algorithm will actually dictate where you finish in the race in the 7 furlong maiden, and then you come through and the pundit will tell you afterwards what you did right, what you did wrong. And we're sort of through osmosis explaining the entire process of everything that happens to horses all the way through, but hopefully making it fun and interactive so that anyone from 7 to 70 can have a go at it.
That sounds amazing, doesn't it?
Yeah, I love, the museum aspect of racing as well, and just stuff like when, I remember being up at Downpatrick and they'd a museum of, they had a little kind of show reel of horses that had run in the Ulster National down the years and had gone on to, I think, win the Grand National. And even the Curragh, when that museum is done there, I think racing museums are probably something that we haven't really, I suppose, mastered yet in Ireland, because if you go into the Croke Park Museum, it does unbelievable trade, but I would have thought racing has a lot more to offer than the field sport in many ways, because there's so much memorabilia and so much going on. And I think, considering the history of Irish racing, we've a lot to show reel, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when people go down to the farm as well, then I was down there last spring. Like, you talk about hands-on experience. You literally walk around the foaling yard and you'll see them from like a day old up to when they're just about to go out into the field. It's the most, is that important to you, that people do get that sort of level of close-up experience? It's not, you're not standing at the bottom of a field and you're, seeing them from a far distance.
Short of allowing the muck out the boxes, that's what we want. We want people to get as close to a horse as safe as possible. Like, so you'll be able to see the stallions coming in from the field. You'll be able to get right up and pet some foals. Hurricane, Flying Hardy, Eustace, if you shake a carrot at them, they'll come straight up to the gate anyway. They know they're the superstars of the place. Yeah. So, you can come in and pet them. You can come in and get close to them as possible. And obviously with the new experience, we want to show you kind of the story behind that, just to really enhance the experience for people when they come.
And those stallions as well, you talk about, obviously, the invincible spirit. He's your star attraction, right? I mean, what's it like just seeing what's the response of sort of normal people to him, because he's had such an incredible career?
Well, I think people are sort of blown away by him, really, when they understand. It's engaging people, and actually when they understand what's going on, it brings the whole story to life for them.
Should just say, like, he's $100,000 a pop stallion. So
yeah.
This is, he's a big deal in the world of bloodstock.
Yeah, I always joke with people when they come, like, he's got the strongest back in the world, carrying a farm on it for 10 years. Like, he's been an amazing servant to us and to the Irish industry in general. Like, he's had sons at stud now. Kingman, who's the real up-and-coming stallion son of his in Juddmonte Farms, but he's also I Am Invincible in Australia. He's left a champion in England and a champion in Australia. So his legacy to the breed is incredible in itself. But for us, for our farm, over the last 10 years, obviously he generates a huge income, but he's an attraction in himself. Like, we've stud stallions at the stud since 1946, like since the Irish National Stud was set up, and we've only ever had one Invincible Spirit. We've had 75 other stallions who weren't fit to lace his boots.
How important is he then? Like, 'cause say like Galileo to Coolmore, where not only have Coolmore obviously a load of Galileo bred mares that they have to service, but once Galileo is gone, he's irreplaceable in many ways. So how can you find the next Invincible Spirit? Or if you won't find him, how manageable is kind of the stud in terms of the standard that you've achieved?
Yeah, I suppose that's the challenge of the job, is not. I suppose when I went in, I never said I was going to find the next Invincible Spirit, because that's impossible. There may never be another Invincible Spirit for the stud, but the job is to try and do two things, I suppose. One is to spread our wings a little bit further than where we've been before. So that's, engaging in INS racing and in mare syndicates, and the tourism side of the business is becoming, a greater carrier of the burden in terms of the revenue you need to generate. But also, we invested heavily this year in trying to buy some nice mares so that we could sell some yearlings out of those mares in time. And obviously, you're always trying to buy a stallion prospect. So you do that, and you've probably got a 1 in 10 chance of finding a really good stallion, and you've got another 10 to 1 chance from there on to find an Invincible Spirit. Like.
And how many mares would he cover in a year?
Invincible. Yeah. So he's limited to around 100, 110 mares every year.
And how many mares of those would be yours?
We would only, to justify the expenditure of sending a mare to him, we wouldn't have probably enough mares that are really good, that of that real quality to go to him. Like, so we would probably cover 4 or 5 of our own with him every year. And that was part of the thought process this year, to go out and buy a couple more that could justify, you know, really sending a proper high-class mare that he deserved.
Get another
to him.
Kingman.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
The Phoenix of Spain story, that's actually an unbelievably timed purchase, because he won the 2,000 guineas this year, and literally when about 5 minutes after we'd called him the winner, you were kind of walking around the place going, we just bought him, actually. You can probably announce that now.
Trying to hide, I think, at the time. Yeah, we
So you bought him
purchased
before the race?
We bought him in the winter, actually. So
okay.
He hadn't run prior to the Guineas, so it was like his first run back.
That was his first run back, yeah. So we bought him at the back end of his 2-year-old's campaign. And in our view, he had done enough. You know, as a 2-year-old, like, he won his
not really
maiden.
bred to be a 2-year-old. He's Luke de Vega, like, and all that.
Well, yeah, I suppose. Well, Luke de Vega's they've done pretty well as 2-year-olds as well. You know, he's had plenty. He's had newspaper of record, a Group 1 winner as a 2-year-old as well. So they can be sharp enough. But when you look at him physically, he looked like he'd improve as a 3-year-old. So that was part of our thought process. And I mean, he had won the Acom, Group 3 at York, and then he went on to be second to Too Darn Hot, who was the champion 2-year-old of the year.
Not beaten that far.
Not beaten that far. He got closer to him than anybody else did as a 2-year-old. And he was beaten a short head in the Racing Post Trophy by Magna Grecia, who obviously went on to win the Guineas in Newmarket the year after. Circus Maximus was fourth. So it was a better race. We thought it was a very good race. And at the time, I suppose, people didn't really value it as such a good race. But, you know, the race the year before, Roaring Lion had gone against Saxon Warrior. So it's always a good race. And, you know, you try and win a 2-year-old Group 1, it's not that easy. You know, people always tend
especially if you're fighting against the Aidan O'Briens of this world,
exactly,
who are so mob-handed at that stage of the year.
Of course they are, yeah.
It's kind of like buying, I know, when Cantona was bought for 1.1 million from Leeds or something, and then all of a sudden it just looks the best value ever. So in the space of 1.5 minutes, he's priced like absolutely.
Well,
that was a great. It turned out to be. So who decides that then? Who is it? Like a
it's a
kind
team.
of a board decision or?
So I mean, ultimately the board gives final sanction on any major purchase like that, but it's the team. So we've got 2 guys, Gary Swift and Patrick Diamond, who do a lot of that work for us. Sort of check, like, I mean, every 2-year-old maiden, we'll be looking at it. You know, any colt that moves, we'll have our eyes on it. We try to get our eyes on them as early as we possibly can, to be in a position to purchase them if they go on and progress as, you know, and we're wrong 9 times out of 10, but you just follow everything along and you try and get yourself in a position that you can actually go and purchase one of these. So the guys went and saw him, they loved him, reported back. I went to see him, I loved him. I mean, physically, he's just a beautiful animal. You know, he's typical Lope de Vega, big, strong, powerful mover, and we thought he'd improve as a 3-year-old. But it's always a risk, you know. I mean, he could have been injured and never run again as a 3-year-old, and then we look a bit silly. So it's sort of trying to take a calculated risk if you can, you know. And then obviously the day of the Guineas at the Curragh, you know, the longest and shortest minute and a half of my life anyway, you know, it was just an incredible feeling to be at the first classic of the new Curragh, you know, when everybody's there, it's brand new shiny Curragh, and to win the race with Phoenix of Spain, to win it by 3 lengths, beating Too Darn Hot, who beat him the year before.
You've got to be going around to everyone, I actually bought him a few months ago. How are you getting on? Bought him a few months ago. How are you getting on? Do you want a drink?
The racing is great because, I mean, it was the worst kept secret in the world. After about 5 minutes, we were on RTE, you know what I mean? So it wasn't long getting out.
Yeah, what a touch, though, as we'd like to say in this game. Though, I mean, for all the ones that go wrong, it's nice to have one right like that.
It's interesting. Also, like if everyone who's looking in now or listening in is like they don't know what we're talking about here. When are his offspring going to be running, and like when can they kind of look out for them? And physically, are they going to look like him? Why is he going to plant his stock? Blah blah blah. Stamp his stock rather. And how will he get on from your mind?
Well, I suppose the best opportunity for people to see him is this Friday and Saturday at the ITM Stallion Trail. So we're open. 25 other studs are open to the public this weekend. It's an amazing initiative. I advise all your listeners to pop down to some of the studs throughout the country, because it's a great opportunity to get in and see the superstars of racing that you remember. So from our perspective, they can come and see Phoenix of Spain, and they'll see a difference in him from the Curragh, because, you know, Stallions begin to let down. He's getting a little bit more cresty of his neck now.
When you say that let down, maybe just explain what you mean, because obviously people are used to seeing horses on the track when they're completely honed athletes, but they're also physically immature, particularly flat stock. So what difference will they see when they go see him maybe just, you know, a year later and he's
the big difference is, as a colt matures, his neck begins to crest. So he sort of starts to I realise I'm on radio and I'm making the movement there.
It's okay. We're still on.
We're live on the internet. It's okay.
He'll begin to thicken through his neck, and he'll put on weight. Like, obviously, we don't expect him to go and run a mile anytime soon. All he has to do is a fairly easy activity for him. So our job is to put weight on him and really just to get him looking like the finished article. So you'll see the difference when you come to the studs over the weekend. You'll see the difference between the Galileos and the Stallions who are well established, and the race horses you're used to seeing who are kind of as thin as possible. You know, they don't want any excess fat on them, so they're hard, fit, trained to go and run a mile as quick as they possibly can. The Stallions have, as we say, let down, put on a bit of weight, and look a bit stronger.
Got some very important exercise to be done, though, in fairness.
Exactly.
I remember when I went to Coolmore years ago, and Sadler's Wells he was at the end of his sort of stud career, but the stud master said, I said, how many mares do you cover like nowadays? And he said, I think it was just one a day. But he'd prefer to cover a few more. I remember when my favourite memory of the National Sod was when the Queen visited, and the late Jeremy, who's obviously the sire of, who's a scatter of bumper horses now, and he's kind of...
He's a massive loss.
Yeah. A huge loss, yeah.
But, so he reared up in front of the Queen, and the Queen was kind of like this. Absolutely didn't flinch. What was she, like 85 at the time?
Yeah.
Certainly well into her 80s, and she was just like, and if you ever saw this is a normal woman in an abnormal life, she was more comfortable around horses, I'd say, than she was nearly humans at that stage. She didn't flinch at all, and Jeremy just got back on his feet and life went on.
Yeah, she's a great horse lover. Obviously, she has her own stud in England, and she would understand breeding and pedigrees better than most people.
That must have been huge for the stud, because it was all on TV. It was like the whole thing was obviously televised live throughout or whatever.
Well, it was fantastic for the Irish racing industry. It was. I suppose it goes back to that whole thing of horses being part of our culture and part of our heritage, and actually the first thing people think of when they think of Ireland. You know, you've got the pint of Guinness, you've got the harp, and you've got the horse. And the things she wanted to come and see were the horse farms.
Now is like
Sorry, don't get those two confused. Yeah,
you're thinking of the border regions there now.
So she came to our stud, but she also went to Coolmore. She went to Giltown. She wanted to see the best stallions in the world, so she did her own stallion trail when she came, and actually wanted to see those top class stallions that we have in this country. And I suppose our job is to promote the fact that, you know, maybe the general public and maybe even the sporting public may not actually appreciate that essentially Irish racing and Irish bloodstock, I would say we're close to the Brazil or Argentina of the sporting world.
The rugby New Zealand anyway.
Yeah,
in terms of the size of the country.
Well, if you think of the two horses that have dominated international racing, say over the last 20 years, that'd be Frankel and See the Stars. Frankel was conceived in Coolmore down in County Tipperary. He spent an awful lot of his young life in Meath up in Ferrens and Judmont's farm there. So he was raised essentially in Ireland. And See the Stars was born, bred and raised in the Irish National Stud, having been covered in Kildangan Stud in Kildare as well. And then when he retired from John Ox's yard, which is only 4 miles up the road from us anyway, he retired to Giltown, which is 10 miles the other way towards Kilcullen. So Ireland has been responsible for the Lionel Messi and the Cristiano Ronaldo of horse racing over the last 25 years.
It's probably the best horses I've ever seen, though.
I'd say so,
I would say so.
See the Stars only ran once in Ireland as a 3-year-old in Leopardstown, and Frankel unfortunately never came over here. I was lucky enough to see him at York. The argument will still rage which of them was better because they were different styles, but like I don't, as good as See the Stars was, I don't think he ever did what Frankel actually did in the racecourse, which was completely insane. And it's what have you made of him as a stallion? Because his stats of like group winners to runners is kind of off the charts, even though his expectation level was so high. Yeah,
expectation level was high. He got fantastic mares.
He was well managed, wasn't he, from the start?
He's been well managed, as you'd expect from Judd.
Absolutely.
You know, but there's no doubt he's a top class stallion. You know, he stands for 175,000 sterling now. So
that's been constantly going up since.
Who's better value, him or Galileo?
It depends what you're trying to do.
This is a hypothetical for most of our listeners.
Yeah, for the vast majority.
We're losing them out there.
They want to buy that foal that was born yesterday.
Look, Galileo is the proven champion. He's been the best stallion, arguably, of the last 100 years. You know, I mean, certainly he took on the mantle of Sadler's Wells when Coolmore needed, you know, a successor to come along. Galileo has, without question, been the successor. I mean, he's champion sire what is it, 9, 10, 11 years of the last 12 in a row. You know, he's a phenomenal stallion. He gets Group 1 winner after Group 1 winner. Try and match up with him. You know, he's an amazing horse. So, you know, if I had the choice and money didn't come into it, would I send a mare to Galileo or send a mare to Frankel? You'd probably send a mare to Galileo.
Invincible Spirit's not an option, obviously.
Yeah.
If I had an Invincible Spirit mare, I'd send her to Galileo.
There you go. What's the value stallion in the Irish National Stud for the more?
Well, they're all value stallions. Asher, look, we've 7 stallions on the rock. Elusive Pimpernel is probably rock solid. You know, he's 3 grand.
Just so solid,
he's full as it is. You know, yeah, he's absolutely out the door.
What's he standing for?
3,000.
Yeah.
So Soviet Pimpernel, you know,
handled the ground surprisingly well, I thought.
Handled the ground surprisingly well. I think he'll improve again.
Ground,
I see Peter Fahey on today. I think he's going to go to Leopardstown for the racing festival, probably on to Cheltenham. So he's a good horse. Expatriate ran very well in Cheltenham New Year's Day. And Cours Sublime, you know, probably a little bit disappointing at Leopardstown, but at the same time, stepping up into open company as a 4-year-old, I think he'll be a lovely 5 and 6 and 7-year-old, and especially when he jumps the fence, I'd say he'll be a lovely horse. So
yeah,
you've omitted to name the other 5 there. So you've Decorated Knight.
So yeah, well, Decorated Knight, you know, he had his first foals this year. He's a Galileo, so hopefully maybe he might take over the mantle in time. But he's an amazingly well-bred horse. You know, he's a nephew of Giants Causeway, who everyone will remember from the early 2000s, and also Glen Eagles. He's 5, 6 Group 1 winners in his immediate second dam. So he's an incredibly well-bred horse. His first foal sold really, really well. You know, multiples of what they cost to produce. National Defence then is our first son of Invincible Spirit that we've ever stood. So he's obviously very exciting. And Free Eagle has had a really good start. Ger Lyons has had a couple of really nice horses. Justifier, Auxilia. He's got a few entered in the Derby. We expect them to improve as 3-year-olds like he did himself. And obviously Phoenix of Spain then, you know, we think is really solid, good value at 15,000, and he's filling up pretty quickly, you know. So I'd say we'll cover a full book with him of around 140 mares. Yeah,
it's pretty exciting time. And I suppose look at the calendar year. I mean, you'll sort of the fall season, then the middle of racing, then you're looking towards what, sales and that? Is that how your sort of year pans out?
Yeah, I suppose just on the stud side of it. So you've got the breeding. It's two distinct seasons. You've got the breeding season and the sales season. So for the first 6 months of the year, we'll be foaling down, getting mares back in foal. You know, and that generally takes up all of our time. And then the second half of the year, we try to sell off the progeny that we've essentially produced in the first half of the year. So the yearling sales come around in sort of August, September, and then we'd have foal sales and breeding stock mares to sell in November and December. So that's generally the 2 halves of the year. But from a tourism point of view, then it's kind of the opposite. We're closed in the winter and we're very busy all the way through the summer. So it keeps us on our toes all year round, really.
Yeah.
How does it work financially? So if you're a national stud, is it basically don't be loss making, and where does the profit go if you make profit?
So essentially we stand on our own 2 feet. So we're a commercial semi-state body. So we're under the aegis of the Department of Agriculture. We report into the department, but we basically stand on our own 2 feet. So whatever profit we generate, we put back into trying to buy new stock, and essentially, you know, try to keep the doors open every year. But we don't get any handout as such. So we have to generate our own profit. You know, we run the business very much.
You understand it's strictly run in that, you know, there's absolutely no chance of you doing an FAI on it and
requesting a big bailout when made some terrible decisions at the sales.
That's not a bad idea. The national stud could bail out the FAI.
Yeah. But maybe the FAI should buy some yearlings.
Well, they'd probably end up buying
that. Just the guy.
But it is. I have spoken to people, and it's like this. It's really strict. There's no way that you could ever there could be no red flags or anything. It's quite strictly kind of I suppose looked into at government level and that.
Yeah, well, any major capital decision would be approved by our board first, and then obviously approved by the department.
Yeah.
So no, it's pretty robust. Yeah, I suppose we always say we've kind of the worst of both worlds. We have all the red tape and all the all the bureaucracy that goes with it, and we don't get any funding as such. So, but look, we're very happy with how it's structured.
Would that make you want to progress to a private stud where it's more commercially driven, or is that the ambition for somebody who works in a stud, or are people very proud, I suppose, to work for the national stud?
I think people are very proud. Look, I suppose we have a very simple ethos. Like I was listening on the way into a lot of the tributes to Marion Finucane, and there was an interview she gave years and years ago, just about her first show on the radio. and her personal show that she was actually, you know, in charge of, say, and she just mentioned that the interviewer asking her, what are you expecting to talk about on your show? Well, we want to be a service. I want to be a service to radio. And she sort of, after that, said, well, that sounds a little bit, you know, highfalutin. Yeah. We want to increase the consciousness. But actually, that's sort of what the National Stud is actually in existence for. Yeah, we have to make a profit so that we can then actually provide a service and raise the consciousness and actually do the things we really want to get involved in, which is INS racing, starting a racing club with 300 people going racing and improving the race day experience as part of a club, or a mare syndicate, which we also run, like where you can pay a small amount and get involved in bloodstock trading at a lower level without the risk as such, you know, that you can actually get involved in some way, shape or form. And that's what the racehorse experience is about as well, actually opening up the doors and letting people in and letting people experience all the unbelievable things we believe that horse racing has to offer to the wider public, and just making it more accessible. I suppose that's really the role of the National Stud, and that's what we actually dedicate ourselves to. And luckily we've got, you know, 45 people work down there. They're a brilliant bunch of people. They come in every day, most days smiling, you know, and they get a real kick out of a day like Phoenix of Spain, or simple days where a family comes in and leaves and says, geez, I had a great day. And the amount of people who leave and say, I had no idea. I had no idea that this whole industry existed, that this whole story was there to be heard. Like, so our job is to tell that story as loudly as we can, make it as engaging as possible, and actually get people in the door. And I think once people engage with the sport, and once people get over that initial barrier that they might have, that it's a bit difficult, or the language is a bit strange, or that, you know, maybe you have to be bred into it to actually proceed within this industry. Once we actually dispel all those misnomers, it's amazing how many fans we can actually create, I think.
I like the kind of human stories that when New Approach was born, he became an unbelievable, won the Derby with Jim Bulger. When he was born, Park Express, his dam, was getting quite old and her sight had almost gone, so they put a bell around his neck so that you could always know where he was, and little things like that, because there's always mother and son stories that, you know, that you can relate to and whatever. And I definitely would advise people to go along to the National Stud and just to see what it's all about. I'd be surprised if you were bored. I think it's lovely stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, make sure you get along to the Irish National Stallion Trail, isn't it? The ITM
the
Stallion
Irish
Trail.
Turbo Marketing Stallion Trail. Yeah, it's on this weekend. Like, all the studs are opening their doors. So if you want, I mean, if you haven't seen See the Stars for 10 years, go along to Giltown and see him. Go down to Coolmore, see Galileo. Go to Yeomanstown to see Dark Angel. These are the best stallions in the world, you know, and racehorses that you'll remember. And you'll go in and chances are you'll get a cup of tea and a ham sandwich and you'll have a great day out.
Yeah, absolutely. Go to itm.e for all the details on that. We're going to take a quick break and then we're back to look ahead to Naas.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
Yeah, and welcome back to Friday Night Racing and Off the Ball, brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Make sure you visit hri.ie and, of course, follow that new Twitter account at HRI Racing, #every racing moment. Right, we're back with Cathal Beale from the Irish National Stud and, of course, Johnny Ward as well. Looking forward to Naas this weekend because it is the first Grade 1 in Ireland this weekend. The Lullers of Naas Grade 1 Novices Hurdle. Johnny, NVLN, he's a phenomenal horse, Cheltenham Champion bumper winner. Odds-on favourite for this. There's no looking past him here, is there?
Yeah, I was speaking to Brendan Duke Jr. earlier on. He said his brother hasn't gone racing in 2 or 3 years, but he's going to Naas to see NVLN, which is staggering for a novice hurdler who's run twice over hurdles. But he looks the real deal. This race is turning out to be, you know, a lot of people would argue there are too many Grade 1s. There's definitely a case to be made. We obviously have the Tolworth tomorrow. If you threw in the Talworth into the Naas race, you'd have an even better race. That's obviously different jurisdictions, but this Grade 1 has held up really well since they gave it a Grade 1 moniker. Naas is one of my favourite tracks. It's got the HRI Track of the Year in December. Lots of celebrations had by the Naas crew that night, but it was thoroughly deserved. It's a fantastic track, jumps and flat. Great place to go racing in the summer, but it's Naas and Navan are probably, I don't know, in terms of racing, are possibly my two most favourite tracks. You've no excuses. Proper stiff finish sorts out the men from the boys, as it were, and Envoy-Allen looks like the type to absolutely relish it.
Yeah, well, we do love a good novice in this country, don't we? Like, I mean, Sam Crow hype and the like aside, but you know, a good young horse is coming through, and it's a great time of the year. They go win this race, and you're lined up for Cheltenham, aren't you?
Yeah, like there's a danger with a race like this from a punter perspective. You go in and you say, so you want to go through. This card is very much worth perusing from a punter perspective. You have a mare's beginner's chase that's very, I have a really strong bet in it. You have a cracking novice chase. You have a couple of handicaps. You have obviously the Grade 1. You have a bumper all full of unraced horses. That's fascinating in its own right. And then you're tempted to say, sure, Envoy-Allen will win that race, so I won't look at it. Now, it may not be as simple as that, and there's no way bookmakers are going to start pricing them up as an even money shot. So they're going to go something like 4 to 9, 2 to 5. So there may be an angle of backing something else. I was speaking to Mouse Morris about French Dynamite, who I thought put in a brilliant performance on his debut below Thurles. Mouse really didn't want to run him in this race, but he just said there aren't that many options for horses, so I have to start somewhere. I think gorgeous long-term prospect. If you can get some sort of value without Envoy-Allen, or even if Envoy-Allen is too short, there might be something there, but ultimately in terms of just purity and virtuosity, I'd like to see him run. He's a gorgeous horse.
Yeah, Longhouse Poet as well, nice sort for Martin Brassel too, but I mean, the way Envoy-Allen won at Fairyhouse, there's just so much to like about it. Then obviously Abacadabras went and followed up and won a Grade 1 over Christmas Call.
Yeah, well, Abracadabras was very impressive. I'm not sure he beat an awful lot at Leopardstown, but he certainly franked the form. Another Group 1 win underneath it. Elixir Dene is not without a chance, as well. Like
Willie has an excellent record in this.
Yeah, it's hard to discount Willie in any shape or form. Mark Walsh as well. There's an awful lot of unexposed horses in here, like there's a lot of them with a lot of ones beside their names, so it's not just a penalty kick now for Envoy-Allen. But look, everything we've seen from him so far suggests that he could be very much the real deal. Like, he started off, was he 2 to 1 favourite for the bumper last year at Cheltenham? That's pretty much unheard of, you know.
And what was extraordinary for me that day was when Blue Starry came alongside. Like 90% of horses at that stage couldn't go on, but he got another gear straight away, and I was like, wow, there's something a bit special here. He did the exact same in the Royal Bond.
Yeah.
The pace over his hurdles for a big horse is out of this world. Like, he's clearly a chaser in the making. Physically, he is a chaser, but the way he flicks over the top of his hurdles is spectacular for me.
It's brilliant. Like, I was saying this earlier as well, like, good hurdlers are smashing to watch. I know it's beautiful to see the way, say, Album Photo was over a fence at Tremor, but the likes of Archibald, like, and when you see
their belly across,
and when you just see them like making ground on everyone else, it's beautiful to watch. And this guy is the real deal at his hurdles. He's so professional, for considering he went straight out of a maiden hurdle into the Royal Bond. It was like bang, click, click, click. But a couple of aspects to this race. People who want to see him run in the Ballymore at Cheltenham, which are a lot of people who backed him anti-posts, want him to win very well here. I still think he could rock up in the Supreme. I don't know, but apparently the Ballymore is by far the most likely. But this will test him. It's a good test.
Yeah, what a hand Gordon has to play in those novice races, though. He's currently got the favourite for the 3 novice hurdles, and then he's got Battle Over Doyen for the RSA as well. Who's actually, if you read Simon Rowlands today, the sectionals for Battle Over Doyen's race in the closing stage were actually phenomenal for a 3-mile chaser, when it looked like he wasn't actually that quick. But he's obviously won this Grade 1 at Naas in the past as well. And
the mad thing, Collie, is you'd forget how good Malone Road was last season as a bumper horse.
He was a chunking horse last year.
Yeah.
He was my idea of the Supreme winner all of last season, and then he didn't appear. But whatever Cheveley Park have done, I mean, if you could explain to people, Cheveley Park's getting involved in National Hunt racing, to me was a little bit out of the blue, but what was the thought process in the industry about it?
Well, I think everybody was delighted, actually, that they saw the value of coming into the National Hunt game. I think everybody wants to have a winner at Cheltenham, and that's ultimately what they achieved with him last year, Envoy-Allen. But I think they made a very significant investment in National Hunt stock, and they've gone back in again and bought more. It's great to see.
Yeah, it was funny because I was on to Eddie O'Leary, and obviously Jigginstown is pulling out of the sales ring or whatever, but he was saying they were under bidder for, pretty sure it was Malone Road, I was just like, yeah, that's when you get a new boy in town. It's like when the Field came in and the Yank came in. He's like, yeah, I'm going to actually outbid you here. And Malone Road looked the best purchase ever because, like, he was a point-to-point winner who won a slowly run bumper in the manner of a sprinter. He was that quick. And then this fella came along, and I was like, Jesus. But in general, Gordon's depth, if he had Malone Road, you can just imagine, because he has Battle Over Doyen, he has Fury Road, he has Abracadabras, he has Envoy LN. And speaking to Jack Kendi during the week, I was on about Abracadabras. Is he like, would you swap him for Anthony in the Supreme? And he's like, not at the moment anyway. And I was like,
so just goes to show how much. Look,
what's coming in
what's
behind?
coming in behind. Was that not the quote from Eddie O'Leary over Christmas as well? That they won 5 bumpers and still said, "On our best bumper horse was beaten."
Yeah, that was Hammerson. Yeah, in Leopardstown. But bumpers are strange because
look, the horse are not bred for them.
No.
Jigginstown are buying chases in the making, so a bumper win is obviously a bonus.
I find them strange races. I always think it's weird how much faith Willie Mullins puts in bumpers.
Yeah.
If you look at Blackbow was running a maiden hurdle the other day. He's now, is he 7? I think he's gone 7. So between running in bumpers, missing some of his career, this is an out-and-out chaser. He's still running in maiden hurdles, and I'm like, why are you wasting your time? But Willie obviously just he likes bumpers.
Yeah, it's elsewhere. Tallworth looks a bit of a 2-horse race. Fiddler on the Roof.
Not even finished with Ace yet.
Son of Camus. Oh, yeah,
what's going on here?
Yeah, I know. So
will you be racing Sunday?
Tenace, I will, yeah.
Everyone should get Tenace, I think.
We were actually just saying off air how much we genuinely like it.
Yeah, and there's a good, it's a proper, I think if the weather's on like today, it'll be literally perfect. Gorgeous horse on show. We were talking
Where
about
else have we got?
The bumper is actually my nap of the weekend. We'll get to that, but a few other horses to look out for. Caravation in the first, gorgeous presenting mare. Philip Dempsey trains. Dunvegan, Pat Fahey's is fascinating run in the novice chase, taking on Tornado Flyer in 0-10. Obviously, Envoy LN should win. My Man at Kaneko is an intriguing runner. He's 11 years of age. He hasn't won in 4 years or thereabouts, but I do give him a good chance. And the really, really strong fancy as well would be Fox LaBelle in the conditionals race at 3:20. But there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and just unfortunately, Johnny, there weren't any winners over the festive period. But I mean, look, it was tough. It was tough going. I'd be with you on that.
To be fair.
What?
I can't remember. We recorded a long time ago.
I know.
We should have found something.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, so our Injured Jockeys Fund charity betting is going to restart in the new year, right?
Yeah.
So action this weekend, obviously Cork and Naas.
Fiddler on the Roof as well, running in the Tallworth. A horse that John Joe Walsh trained, and I think John Joe viewed him as a proper staying type. Yet he's fairly hot favourite for the Tallworth. The ground is.
Colin Tizard's an excellent record in that race recently as well.
Look, Robbie Powers, renaissance as a rider well into his 30s, incredible. He's back this weekend. This horse is very exciting. I think he'll take a lot of beating in the Tallworth. But one of my punting strategies, Carl, is in bumpers. I hate backing flat-bred horse in bumpers. Now, these aren't necessarily flat-bred horses in the 350
This is the 350 at Naas. It is a bumper for 4-year-olds. Which is
for 4-year-olds. So
they're basically 3-year-olds.
It does read like a kind of, it could read like a 3-year-old flat maiden at Dundalk. Yeah. So you've the Dubawi here, Galileo, Camford Cliffs. You've Muckadram. There's some nicely bred horses, but I was really taken by Ted Walsh's horse and pedigree. Fame and Glory, fantastic stallion. Unfortunately, like Germany, passed away out of a mare who won a listed bumper for Ted Walsh. The only worry here would be that the ground wouldn't be soft enough to maybe slow the others down to be all proper flat-bred horses. But P.W. Mullins taking the ride for Ted Walsh.
What a combination! The 2 best amateurs in Irish racing history, I suppose.
Yeah, and you're a big fan of PW's writing as well.
He is going to put us all out of business, I'm afraid, Johnny.
His article in the Racing Yearbook was
that's the one on Ruby was brilliant. He had one on Rachel Blackmore as well. He recently had an article in the Irish Independent on Faugheen, which is worth checking out, and the one he wrote in the Irish Field during the summer about Wicklow Brave would bring a tear to a glass eye. It was. You couldn't possibly read it in one sitting.
And the mad thing is, you look at, like, say, Donald Trump's kids, like, what chance do they have to be decent, normal people, right?
Yeah.
Donegal O'Brien and Joseph could be the most arrogant people you'll ever meet. Patrick the same. They're the most, literally so humble. And I say that, I genuinely mean that. If you met Patrick Mullins, he's just like anyone else. And not only is he a very good rider, an amateur record breaker, he can bloody well ride as well.
Yeah, I know. It's disgusting.
We have.
Yeah, I mean, I know. You just imagine him tipping up at 5-a-side and scoring 6 or 7 goals and just walking away.
Just give us a chance.
Just, come on, Patrick. Yeah, no, it's it's a sickening level of talent. Anyway, he's your best bet of the weekend.
Hardwired.
Hardwired.
So you can imagine us kind of rocking it up to the betting ring at 3:47, and Cathal kind of up in the stands enjoying his day out and saying, well, they're getting stuck into this thing. They've either had a very good day or they need a winner.
Yeah.
The latter likely being the case. Like.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I mean,
look in the parade ring though, because
absolutely.
What are you looking for here in a 4-year-old bumper horse this time of year?
You're looking for the fit, I suppose. You know, some of them are first time out, are they? I haven't had a good look at the bumper.
Run.
Yeah, so
that's the thing. Someone like Joseph. I mean, he obviously had a handful of bumper winners over the course of the years. You'd have to keep an eye on that Galileo dance.
Horse,
yeah, like and you know, flat-bred horses with a bit of stamina on the dam side can always sort of surprise as well. But I think you're looking for something fit anyway, and like the market will be important, won't it? You know, and for that, like if there's a bit of support, especially for Ted's horse, you know, you'd probably row in behind it, but wouldn't be a bet for me now in a race where nothing has ran before.
I've just given it as the nap of the weekend. I couldn't have bet in the race at all, actually.
The best judge, the guy who picked the winner of the Guineas 6 months out as a stallion prospect. Not for me, Jeff.
I haven't tipped a loser yet this year. You know?
Yeah, there you go. Would you have you had a look at the card? Is there anything you would pop up?
I've had a look, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't burn the airwaves up by giving a losing tip. Look, sure, I think Envoy Allen will win. I think Alexir Dane might chase him home and maybe do the forecast.
Okie doke.
Not a bad shout.
Thanks a million for that. Cathal Beale has joined us on Friday Night Racing this week alongside Johnny Ward, and of course Hardwired is going to be our bet of the day for the Tote and the Injured Jockeys Fund there. But just a reminder as well, new Tote customers can get €50 cash back for opening a new account, so make sure you see the tote.com website for more details. Anyway, thanks a million for joining us on Friday Night Racing here on Off the Ball.
Friday Night Racing.
On Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.